Aha, so nas zaštukali. Dobar dan.
Dobar dan. Dobar dan, ta čas, ko z vas naši gostitelji spuščajo noter, najprej nekaj tehničnih informacij z moje strani. Začeli bomo v zelo kratkem času. Ljudno vas vse samo prosim, da ste ves čas prisotni z ugasnjenimi, poudarjam, mikrofoni. Lahko boste svoje vprašanja zapisali v pogovorno okno in naši gostitelji jih bojo kasneje posredovali, ko se bo odprla možnost za širšo razpravo. Bom še v angleščini povedala. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we will start in a few seconds. In the meantime, I would kindly ask to mute yourself. As a reminder, you may write your questions in the chat, and I will read them out to our panelists when we open the discussion. The event is held in English because we are expecting participants from different EU countries. So all of you who are from Slovenia and wondering why we are talking in English, this is because we are expecting also participants, attendees from other EU countries. Just a few more seconds. I'm waiting for the green light from the organizers.
Samo še malo. Aha, lahko začnemo.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you at the Diversity and Inclusion in Education event. This virtual event is organized by the Slovenian Diversity Charter in collaboration with Croatian Diversity Charter as part of celebrating the European Diversity Month in May 2021. This is the second event we are hosting. And perhaps you noticed that something interesting happened. Although we are celebrating diversity, we have a panel of male speakers and a female moderator. And last week, when we had our sibling event, the situation was exactly the opposite. We had a panel of female speakers and a male moderator. And even the opening remarks last week were made by female state secretaries. And this week we are hosting two male secretaries. State secretaries. This is life in its full diversity. Diversity is very much real also in the education system. And institutions in the education system address this diversity in a different way, very differently. Each one of us deserves to live in a society that accepts him or her or them as he or she or they are. We are making important steps towards such a society, but there is always room for improvement. And today we have gathered together to discuss and to exchange good practices in managing diversity and inclusion in the educational sector in the times of pandemic, which is a big challenge to us all, and to reaffirm the importance of managing diversity and inclusion in educational sector. A year ago, the education system too was suddenly faced with an extraordinary new reality. Both countries, Slovenia and Croatia, experienced school closures. Students were homebound, together with their parents and extended families. We could witness an education crisis that strengthened inequalities in education and disproportionately hurt vulnerable and disadvantaged students. On the other side, teachers were faced with new challenges. For example, new technologies, work-life balance, working from home. So how did we all manage to overcome these challenges? And what awaits for us in the future? Let's discuss all these themes and topics with our distinguished guests. I would first kindly ask both state secretaries from Slovenia and Croatia for their opening remarks. Both speeches will be in their respective national languages of the speakers, And the translation of the Slovenian speaker's speech will also be available in the chat. So please, Mr. Damir Orehovec, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Ja, hvala lepa. Spoštovani Tomislav Paljak, državni sekretar na Ministrstvu za znanost in izobraževanje Republike Hrvaške, cenjeni gostje, organizatorji in udeleženci današnjega dogodka. Veseli me, da vas lahko tako v svojem imenu kot v imenu Ministrstva za izobraževanje, znanost in šport pozdravim na današnjem virtualnem dogodku, torej okrogli mizi, ki ob praznovanju Evropskega meseca raznolikosti v ospredje postavlja pomembno temo, in sicer raznolikost in vključenost v izobraževanju. Dovolite mi, da že na začetku predam iskrene čestitke in seveda zahvalo vsem nosilcem projekta. Vizija ministrstva se že nekaj let udejanja v podpori oblikovanja razrednih skupnosti, torej empatičnih in odgovornih posameznikov in posameznic, ki zmorejo spoštovati in sprejemati raznolikost in na ta način razvijati učečo se skupnost. Svet si želimo pripeljati v učilnice in odpreti učilnice svetu. Pri tem verjamemo, da je medkulturno izobraževanje eno od pedagoških didaktičnih načel in seveda vključen del izobraževanja na vseh ravneh in področjih pridobivanja znanja. Prav tako je tudi zagotavljanje varnega in spodbudnega učnega okolja eden od temeljnih ciljev vzgoje in izobraževanja v slovenskem sistemu. Zajema krepitev socialnih veščin, strpnosti, spoštovanja drugačnosti in omogočanja razvoja ter doseganja čim večje ravni ustvarjalnosti. To so tudi področja, ki jih torej naše ministrstvo vključuje v program predsedovanja Slovenije Svetu Evropske unije in seveda je tudi del tega, kar načrtujemo za naslednjo finančno perspektivo v okviru kohezijske politike. Verjamemo, da lahko izobraževanje ohrani osrednjo vlogo pri zagotavljanju stabilnosti in varnosti naših družb zgolj tako, da odločevalci ustvarjamo in zagotavljamo potrebno družbeno okolje za sodelovanje in za razvoj. Torej, da ohranjamo otroke, obravnavamo otroke z spoštovanjem in z dostojanstvom, da jim zaupamo pravico do soudeležbe pri sprejemanju odločitev in da seveda zagotavljamo pogoje za resnično vključenost vseh, torej, ki sega preko tega, da samo o tem govorimo, ampak da to tudi udejanjamo. Torej, na Ministrstvu za izobraževanje, znanost in šport se zavedamo torej svoje soodgovornosti in vloge pri razvoju kritične miselnosti in strpnih posameznikov ter posameznic. Prizadevamo si, da izobraževanje ohrani osrednjo vlogo pri vzpostavljanju varnega in spodbudnega učnega okolja. Okolja, v katerem šolajoči z optimizmom, zadovoljstvom in upanjem zrejo v prihodnost. Okolja, ki otroke opremlja ne samo z zakladnico znanja, temveč jih tudi z pogumom, s katerim premagujejo ovire na svojih poteh in dejavno, torej lahko dejavno sooblikujejo družbo. Torej, spoštovane, spoštovani. S krepitvijo strpnosti, kulture sprejemanja, družbene odgovornosti, fleksibilnosti in inovativnosti, torej listina o raznolikosti seveda sega preko simbolične ravni, za kar vam seveda tudi čestitam. Z veseljem je, da torej lahko skupaj udejanjamo vrednote družbene odgovornosti ter jih z zgledom delimo z današnjimi in prihodnjimi generacijami. Torej še enkrat čestitam vam za uspešno opravljeno dosedanje delo in vam želim veliko uspeha tudi v prihodnje, seveda pa tudi na današnji okrogli mizi. Srečno in ostanite zdravi. Hvala lepa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Damir Orehovec, State Secretary at the Ministry of Education, Science and Sport, Republic of Slovenia. And now I would like to ask for his words, Mr. Tomislav Paljak, State Secretary at the Ministry of Science and Education of Republic of Croatia. Thank you very much.
Dobar dan svima, najsrdačniji pozdrav iz Hrvatske, prije svega vrlo vrijednim organizatorima ovoga skupa, a naravno i kolegi državnom tajniku iz susjedne nam i drage Slovenije. Pogodili ste temu, evo odmah mogu reći na početku, i kako ne bi taj rast nejednakosti u obrazovnom sustavu bio još veći, odlučili smo naravno koristiti naše pravo da govorimo svojim matičnim jezicima, i ne samo zato što smo jednaki u Europskoj uniji, nego i zato što smo susjedi i što sam evo srećom kolegu Orehovca većim dijelom razumio, što dakle samo po sebi dovoljno govori, ali mislim da tu prostora ima jako puno. Počeli smo dobro i sa učenjem slovenskog jezika u Hrvatskoj, i mislim hrvatskoga u Sloveniji. Jezik susjeda se mora znati, ne samo zato što on ima praktičnu vrijednost, nego zato što upravo u ovakvim iznenadnim situacijama se susjedi zbližavaju i uviđaju koliko je to u stvari važno. Naravno da kad je riječ o rastu ili nerastu nejednakosti ili jednakosti u obrazovnim sustavima, odnosno kada se one vide i kada su one očitije, normalno da smo svi još uvijek pod velikim dojmom ovog trećeg vala, ove pandemijske krize koja je, ja vjerujem, za nama, ali i sva ta situacija sa covidom je, ja mislim, razotkrila mnoge situacije i u obrazovnim sustavima Slovenije i Hrvatske, ali mislim i diljem Europe. Ono što smo uzimali zdravo za gotovo, ono što smo mislili da smo već nadišli, mislim da je ova bolest razotkrila do temelja i pokazalo se da negdje gdje je sustav naoko bio razvijen, puno teže i puno neučinkovitije se uhvatio u borbu u koštac sa nenadanom bolešću, i onda se tu vidjelo u stvari koliko te nejednakosti ima. Svjedoci smo mi toga i u Hrvatskoj, vjerujem da vi u Sloveniji i diljem Europe, ali ono što ostaje kao sigurno zalog i za budućnost jest da paralelizam infrastrukturnih poboljšanja sustava mora pratiti pedagoški i socijalni, ali naravno evo i ta digitalna transformacija bez koje niti jedan više način rada u obrazovanju u buduće neće biti isti. Taj surovi dodir sa stvarnošću online nastave i svega onoga što u tom segmentu je moguće nadograditi je nešto što je na velika vrata ušlo ne samo kao produkt industrijske revolucije 4.0, nego jednostavno kao nužnost bez koje u budućnosti nećemo moći raditi. Ono što generalno mogu reći jest da mi u Hrvatskoj puno toga dobroga učimo i učili smo iz slovenskog obrazovnog sustava. Napravili ste tu velik odmak i naravno da smo promatrali i način na koji ste reagirali u prvoj omotnici kada ste ušli u Europsku uniju i način na koji smo mi to učinili kasnije, i ova situacija koja se otvara u perspektivi, dakle 21.-27. kako bismo došli do određenih standarda, između ostaloga i lakšeg suočavanja sa nekakvim eventualnim budućim svjetskim krizama. Vjerujem da ćete tijekom ovog današnjeg panela svu tu problematiku otvoriti, da ćete je raspraviti, da ćete je secirati. Jednostavno vrijeme je takvo u kojem moramo djelovati brzo i u kojem svako uočavanje eventualnih nejednakosti u prilici da se naša djeca obrazuju, da ona imaju pravu skrb, da bez obzira na sve svoje pretpostavke, bilo fizičke, bilo socijalne, bilo religijske, ne smiju dakle biti u bilo kojem segmentu podređenom položaju u odnosu na ostale. I evo, koristim i priliku reći da smo evo danas u Hrvatskoj ispratili završnicu maturanata, koje su kao evo djeca koja već drugu godinu praktički u toj najintenzivnijoj fazi svoga školovanja su morala biti disciplinirana, strpljiva, koja su na sebe preuzela velik dio tereti, svjesno ili nesvjesno, o tome će još studije govoriti brojne, ali koji su evo uspjeli izaći van, uspjeli su začiniti veseljem svoj završetak školovanja i to je nešto što nam daje optimizam za buduće vrijeme, da sada smanjimo tu psihosocijalnu napetost i mislim da evo između ostalog ovakve teme kakve vi otvarate, ovakvi okrugli stolovi, ovakve konferencije će svakako tome pridonijeti. Ja vam evo u ime svih iz ministarstva u Hrvatskoj želim dobar rad, želim vam puno dobrih, konstruktivnih i kreativnih spoznaja i da se u nekom drugom obliku ponovo sretnemo i da to sve zajedno sumiramo. Hvala vam u svakom slučaju na pozivu.
Gospodin Tomislav Paljak, državni sekretar na Ministrstvu za znanost i obrazovanje. Puno vam hvala na vašim riječima. Thank you very much, Mr. Tomislav Paljak, State Secretary at the Ministry of Science and Education from Croatia, Republic of Croatia. And now we shall proceed with our roundtable. Each of the speakers will have some time to reveal his thoughts and impression regarding our starting points, but you do not need to worry. There will also be some time for discussion at the end. But first, please let me introduce our panelists. Marcos Turley is the principal at Center of Communication, Hearing and Speech in Portorož. Welcome. Mr. Goran Popovic is the principal at Primary School Livada in Ljubljana. Welcome, Mr. Popovic. Mr. Gregor Deleja is the principal at the Grammar School Celje Center. Welcome. Mr. Marian Smonik is the head of unit School of Economics and Business at the University of Ljubljana. Welcome. Mr. Boris Jokic, who unfortunately cannot join us at the moment yet, but he will join us a little bit later, is the director of the Institute for Social Research in Croatia. And finally, Mr. Goran Luburic, the Vice Dean for Academic Affairs at Zagreb School of Business. Welcome. And my name is Sonja Merljak-Zdovc. I am the editor of the online newspaper for children Časoris, who signed the Diversity Charter here in Slovenia. I'm also one of the diversity ambassadors in Slovenia, and I will be the roundtable moderator and your host today. So to start off this panel discussion, I would like to ask you first, what does diversity mean for you and for your organization? And second, who do you have in mind when you speak about inclusion? I would kindly ask each of the speakers, and I would like to ask Mr. Marcos Turley to start. Each of you has 2 minutes to share his thoughts. Thank you very much.
Hello to everyone. Thank you for the first question. Understanding the concepts of diversity usually makes me comprehend the functioning of each individual as a closed system. I do, and not only me, but persons, individuals behave and create relationships with and alongside others with the intention of satisfying our own needs. And if this is the core of my understanding, then I also understand that the human organism is a closed, intrinsically motivated system whose function is focused in order to establish an internal balance and harmony with itself and with its environment. And I strongly believe that acquiring this balance is so unique and diverse that has to be appreciated. Therefore, I can understand diversity as appreciation and a source of creativity. And when you're asking me about inclusion, of course, we can agree and we know that inclusion in itself is mostly understood as an ongoing process of developing equal access to opportunities. In our reality, in our school, in our center, as a special institution, we do develop this possibility to equality to children and adolescents with special needs mainly. Usually we are talking about children with learning disabilities, sensory impairments, hearing impairments, autism, etc., etc. Officially, we are a special institution, as I said, and even though we can make a comparison with different national systems, Slovenia lives a so-called parallel system, parallel reality of special institutions and inclusive institutions. But let me say that our center, even we are probably more inclusive, and we do believe that we are more inclusive, even though we are a special institution, more or most than mainstream schools. And personally, as radical as I could be, I believe in inclusion, but I do not want or imagine that in a fully inclusive society, we would not provide all the special conditions and requirements for those who need them. Let me end this answer that more inclusive education systems are not only for the benefit of children with disabilities. Usually all the special, specific things that we implement in our everyday life are good for everyone. And fostering inclusive learning environments which more accurately reflect our diverse societies help to ensure that the learning needs of all students are met and that all children are able to flourish and fulfill their own full potential. At the end, maybe just let me say that, I would like to merge diversity and inclusion and let us believe that there is a possibility to live in a so-called inclusively diverse society.
Okay, thank you very much. I have also heard these ideas, and I completely agree that the inclusion that is going on in your institution can be also adapted to other elementary schools. Mr. Goran Popovic is one of the principals of an elementary school who knows a lot about inclusion. Maybe the diversity there is a little bit different to what you experience. So I would like to give the word to Mr. Popovic, please. Thank you very much. Mr. Goran Popovic.
Okay, now will be. Sorry, hello everybody. First of all, I want to tell you that I am a migrant too. And some details from my school are that in our school we have children from 27 different countries, and you can listen in our school 18 different languages. The new moments are that from all of our students, 90% are not from Slovenian family. And if you ask me what I think about the inclusion, I must tell you that that's our life. When I start to live in Slovenia, I have the same problem like have all of my students. Now I'm a leader on our school last 10 years, and I really try to give much more than I have when I came to Slovenia in '94. It's a big challenge, and of course, in my school, because most of students are not from Slovenian family, it's easy to be the same. All of us are different, but we are in the same position. It's much more interesting to be in the classic Slovenian school where you have 3 or 5% the migrants or refugees students. But my goal are to prepare our students to include in Slovenian system, in Slovenian between Slovenian citizens, and to don't lose own identity, but to respect and be in good position when they grown up and start to be same citizens like all the others. That's my answer for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Gregor Deleja, he's the principal of Gimnazija Celje Center in Celje. The variety of his students is a little bit less varied, we can say, than Livada, but he still has enormous experience with inclusion of children from especially other countries from ex-Yugoslavia. He's also known to help in any way possible. So Mr. Delea, could you please also share some thoughts with us? Thank you.
Thank you and hello to everybody. It's very nice to be here on such an important topic as inclusion, diversity in education. And for me as an educator, diversity actually means to learn from people from different backgrounds. And different backgrounds mean various life experiences we may have in this strange time we are living in this wonderful world we are living in. It's actually getting to know other ways of life to evolve oneself's way of life. That's diversity for me. And whether it's a difference in culture, religion, education, worldview, or social background, it's just another experience to learn. And I think that all education systems should deal with diversity in this matter. And I couldn't agree more with Mr. Turley, who said that diversity and inclusion are actually just let's say other sides of one medal and should be merged, because being inclusive means actually that you are creating a world, let's say educational environment for us in the schools where ideas matter, where everyone's presence matters, and that's very important, and everyone works matters. And we are diverse in this way, so each has its own ideas, its own way of dealing with stuff, his own needs, whether special or other, and to include them in your way of life, in your organization, in your school system, that means to be inclusive and to respect diversity in this way. That means to give our young people values that were very strongly addressed in this last year of the epidemic or pandemic, and are actually core values that are the main glue that holds our society together, and that we forgot in the last decades of, such as solidarity, empathy, and yeah, that's also diverse and inclusive. That's my way, that's my opinion.
Thank you very much. I received a note saying that we have been also joined finally by Mr. Boris Jokic. Very welcome. Boris Jokic, as I mentioned, is the director of Institute for Social Research, Croatia. But before we give him also the same question, I will repeat the question so he can hear it. And I will ask kindly Mr. Marian Smonik first to answer it, but just for the Mr. Jokic to know what we are discussing, I will repeat. So basically, what does diversity mean to you and to your organization? And second, who do you have in mind when you are speaking about inclusion? Mr. Smonik, please. Thank you very much.
Hello to everybody. So as said, I'm coming from the Ekonomska fakulteta, University of Ljubljana. So in the English language, this is the School of Economics and Business, University of Ljubljana. Thank you, P, for inviting us to be with you today. And we are very proud to be a member of Diversity Charter, of course. Diversity, yes. When you know, I think what I think about when I hear this word about Slovenia, of course, you know, the land of diversities. This is what we are saying about our country, and this is what about what we are so proud of. So, you know, it's not far away from what we are discussing today. So if you don't appreciate the Alps, the coastal area, the Pannonic area, the different wineries, you know, the karst wines, the Styria wines, and so on. So what then do we have in Slovenia? So this is all, you know, the diversity is about. So when then thinking about, you know, my school, you know, we are not far away from this. What does diversity mean? Diversity means variety, and variety means, so refers to differences. So, and if we, so I believe I did find that in your web page somewhere, you know, some words from the Stephen Covey. I believe everybody knows that his 7 habits. You know, his words are: strength lies in differences, not in similarities. So, what does it mean? Diversity, it means that diversity for my schools means that means strength, and this means impact. This means that we do perform our mission as good as it, or better, or as good as we should do it. So that's it. So when thinking about it, so inclusion, for instance, as you said, it's simple. You know, 1,000 of students at our school, and it's altogether around 4,000 students we have. 1,000 is coming from abroad. So all the time we have between 25% of students at our school coming from all different countries in the world. There are even some programs with just one student from Slovenia, EMTM, European Master in Tourism Management, for instance, and the students coming from 40 countries, or summer school, where we have traditionally 400 to 500 people coming from 45 countries again. So this is what we are thinking about when talking about diversity. But of course, diversity has other dimensions as well. So we have a number of students with special status, of course, students with families, with kids. So this is what we are thinking about. And the case is, the situation is that we don't forget all those issues. So we are not just preaching it, we are talking about it, and we are walking this as well. If you see, you know, behind me, you know, this was used when welcoming our new students, and it says no place for violence and exclusion. This is what our school is. And on the other hand, I did just have a chance, and it was really a great opportunity to moderate and organize one of the sessions of the EFMD, so the European Foundations of Management Education Development, which is actually, this is where our main international accreditation is coming from, EQUIS. Based on our proposal, one of the sessions of the annual symposium of BSIS was the pandemic impact and diversity and inclusion. And I was moderating that session. It was exactly 1 month from today, on the 23rd of April, I believe, and there were, you know, all the continents. The people at the symposium are coming from all around the world, not from Australia, but from everybody else, every other continent. So, you know, my colleagues, I invited the colleagues from the European Commission, from French, one of the French universities, and Nottingham Trent University from UK, and of course from my school, Tamara Pavasovic-Trost. And it was really interesting discussion, and we, I believe, did a great work in promoting this issue to the, you know, our business school environment through this symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So whenever we forget what diversity is, we just need to think about Slovenia, which includes diverse elements so nicely into its country. And I believe that Croatia is also quite diverse country. We can even ski in Croatia, although the Croatians prefer to come maybe to Slovenia. But Of course, we all love the coast and the wine, as Professor Smonik said. I'm now still waiting for Mr. Jokic, who appeared and disappeared again. So I would then rather kindly invite Mr. Goran Luburic to join the floor to share his thoughts on diversity and inclusion. And so thank you very much. The word is yours.
Thank you, Sonia. A very big hello from Zagreb School of Business. I absolutely agree and concur with what other panelists have said so far. More or less, it's a kind of a unanimous thought in a way regarding diversity and regarding inclusion. Let me give a specific angle when you ask me personally what I think about diversity. Let's say at a peak point of that thought, I think to myself, well, diversity means that there is no unanimity in thought, mainly, and basically everyone has his or her own opinion and has the means to be heard. Now, by saying that, I'm already going into the field of inclusion, and in a very, let's say, short and simple thought about inclusion, I would say that inclusion means giving everyone equal chances for success, whatever the word success means to each individual. When regarding to the workplace I work at, we are a very open institution. I perform the role of Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, but my nickname here, I gave it to myself actually, is the nanny, which means that every issue, every problem, every single challenge that comes across to each and every student or teacher, professor, is coordinated, is openly discussed, and is sort of a democratically, every individual has a equal chance to say something, to give his or her own opinion regarding some off-class activities or challenges, or regarding classroom sessions, and diversity in thought regarding students, people that are quite adults and already have formed their own way of life values. And I would say regarding higher education, maybe there's a little bit less, there are a little bit less challenges regarding diversity and inclusion in comparison to elementary and secondary education. I would say that statistically it might be a valid point. Yeah, that's all for now. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, definitely in elementary school, all the children are. Also, secondary schools have quite a huge number of young people from both countries, and the third tertiary education is then already a bit different. So the challenges are definitely different. Thank you very much again. I hear that Mr. Jokic is now with us, so I would like to give him the word. And because I'm not sure again if he heard the question that we are discussing at the moment, I will repeat it again. So Mr. Jokic, please, could you share with us what diversity means to you and your organization? And second, who do you have in mind when you speak about inclusion? Mr. Jokic, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Sonia, hello, can you hear me first? Is that finally? Yes. Okay, I had a big problems getting to this meeting. It speaks a lot about diversity and like equal chances of various people. At the moment now, I'm in Zadar. I'm not in Zagreb, and I'm in the car, but I'm not driving. I'm just sitting in a car because that's the only place where I could get a like stable internet connection. Just to introduce myself in a couple of words, I'm Boris Jokic. I'm a head of the Institute for Social Research in Zagreb. I mainly do research scientific work in the field of education, mostly in the pre-tertiary education, so like early in the preschool education, elementary school, and secondary school education. Before I answer your question, there is a special reason why I'm in Zadar on the Adriatic coast. At the moment, we are in the heat of the big national monitoring of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on educators, on pupils, and parents within the Croatian educational system. I know that our colleagues in Ljubljana and Maribor from the university are conducting pretty much the same research, and one of the reasons why we are doing that is basically to assess if this current situation has affected diversity in our classrooms, diversity in our society, and if it had different effects on special groups of not just pupils, but also educational workers. In our institution, in our organization, in the Institute for Social Research, diversity is one of the main topics, not only of our scientific investigation and our scientific interest or errors, if you want to say it that way. We treat diversity also as our fundamental value. We treat it as something which is fundamental to each society, each organization, if it wants to be a society which is based on the fundamental values of solidarity, of, as you said, inclusion, of respect. But just to come back to like what I'm doing now and what is really important, and as one of the first forums to hear, as I said, we have already conducted research on teachers, and we have a sample of more than 5,000 Croatian teachers from both elementary and secondary education, and we can now firmly say that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected diversity in our society, has affected educational chances of different pupils, has affected especially vulnerable groups within the education. When I say vulnerable groups, I do not only mean students and pupils with special educational needs, I also mean gifted pupils and gifted students at the secondary level, and especially those that come from the specific socioeconomic settings and less privileged socioeconomic settings. It has been here at least a narrative, a discourse in Croatian society since the March of 2020, since the first outbreak of pandemic, that each child has a digital device and each child has a high-speed internet. But as you can see that I'm now calling from a car, that's not true for the directors of the institutes, let alone some children which are like left out without basic requirements, basic technical needs for it to be fully included within our societies.
Thank you very much. So diversity and inclusion also means access to internet for everyone, equal access, we can say. So the high-speed internet that can actually offer education at homes, not only at schools, online remote education. You have also conducted research. I mean, we know that that also the earthquake that happened in Croatia twice, actually in 1 year, has very much affected diversity and inclusion in Croatia. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit also more about this? Because our next question will be dedicated also to new vulnerable groups of people that you noticed or found. So please, thank you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. One segment of our sample is over-proportionate, and that's the schools within the Sisak Moslavina county of Croatia, which has been hit by the earthquake in December of last year. There, the situation, it's very interesting. These are unique historical events that have hit our region. First one is pandemic, which is similar to all of us, but then you have the earthquake, which is, as I said, like once in a century, or like once in 2 centuries event. Both of these elements affected pupils and educational workers. I want to say that diversity within the education is not only diversity with regards to the pupils, it's also diversity with regards to the educational workers. Within the earthquake struck regions, existing inequalities have been further exacerbated to the point that not only the access to education, but especially the quality of education has been especially struck. What also has happened there is a emigration of the population, especially the young population, with regards of parents trying to assure the best circumstances for their children. In this regard, the best circumstances to move them from the region. Moving them from the region does not only have educational consequences, it has a serious psychological consequences for the families as such, but it has also serious social consequences with regards to the regeneration and regeneration of that region. If you combine all of these elements, diversity, which is, as I said, the paramount of any society and any community has been seriously struck by these events, and only the the meaningful policies, public policies, could maybe, but I said maybe, with with smart policy options, could maybe deteriorate, or diminish a little bit, or lower the effects of these. But if you do not have a long-term vision of how to affect both individual and the community, then I'm afraid that we may be at risk of losing diversity, and making the societies and our communities accessible, making them manageable to only those who have, and those who have not will be left out. And it's not good for any society, let alone Croatian, for those who have already been as I said, in a pejorative circumstances, to be even hit harder by these unique historical events.
Thank you very much. You mentioned this actually reasons for diversity also in some of the schools, especially here in Slovenia. Migrations, when people leave their homes because for some reason, like you mentioned, the earthquake, parents wanted to give the children the best opportunity, so they decided to leave. So basically they migrated. Mr. Popovic and Mr. Delea both have experience with quite a large influx of migrants. So maybe I would give the word first to Mr. Goran Popovic and then to Mr. Delea, and then we'll continue. So Mr. Goran Popovic, please, what are your experiences? We touched the roots, the causes for migration. I believe migration is the cause for diversity in your school. Thank you. Could unmute yourself, please.
Okay, I must say that each my students, each my family are in the very bad situation. And of course, from the beginning, they have a very bad situation. Now, on last year, when we have a pandemic, we can choose some part of the vulnerable people. That's one group which are in the much more bad situation. It's of course the different where they come and which are the reason why they move on in the other countries. My situation are that I came like economical migrants, and it's much different that if you go away because it's a war or economical situation. And of course, between all of my students and my families, we can choose the people who don't have anything what is necessary to be included in the school system. Of course, it's a big difference between Slovenian family and Slovenian children, which have each students have their own telephone and have own computers and all the other what they need to be on online education. From our migrants students, we have a lot of family which don't have anything. And first, which we must to do are to give them, that's what's necessary to be included in the school system. Of course, for the adoption, it's necessary to be in contact with the other students. It's impossible on the last year, but we have something what's are a little bit better than before, because that family have maybe one computer or one modern telephone. That means that family must be together to be included in the education. That's something what's helped us to include the family in the education system. And of course, we try to give much more or everything what we have. Of course, society helped us for the many computers, telephone, and all the others. And we include a lot of students on the better way than we do that before. Of course, directly contact, it's much better, which we don't have in the last year, but we help them to don't be in the much more bad situation which they are. And that special students are really need lot of help for society, for school, for each from our countries.
Thank you very much. Mr. Delea, what are your experiences?
Well, we are a mainstream, let's say, school with general education programs from gymnasia and one vocational education program. It's preschool pedagogics. So we mainly have experience with economic migration. So people coming to Slovenia, striving for better opportunities, especially from former Balkan countries, also from Russia, for instance. And usually the socioeconomic status is quite comparable to our other students. But to, let's say, bridge this cultural diversity is very important, as also Mr. Popovic said, the communication with all stakeholders. So there is this new pupil and his class, his new teachers, his family also getting to know the new environment in some work organization, or even searching for work, for instance, parents. So to be very good in this communication is, I think, one of the most important things, because you can then use this new, let's say, input of diversity into the school space through a new experience you can make for other students. And this means a better way of including the youngsters coming to the school, especially if they come somewhere in between. So not starting with all the first year students, but coming to their second, third, or even fourth year. And the experiences are very different. So they differ one to each other, and it's necessary to, let's say, to have a special thought or give a special emphasis on storytelling. I don't know how to put this, but the story behind this migration is very important. And if we want to educate our, in quotation marks, mainstream students about diversity, inclusion, and the importance of both, then this storytelling is a perfect opportunity to do so, not through books or through some films or through media, some diverse things happening on the other side of the world, but some stories that are now interconnecting with our life experience and our life stories.
Thank you very much. To follow up on this, I would like to ask you, so what are the new vulnerable groups that you noticed, especially now after pandemic hit us all in the last year, and what are the challenges related to these new groups? So I was wondering if Mr. Delea, have you had experienced anything like that?
I think we cannot speak about new vulnerable groups. We just before this year of the pandemic and extraordinary things happening to us, we just didn't see some groups that were vulnerable before. And if I stick to the storytelling of before, just last week, our fourth year students ended their school career, is just Matura before them. And in the last classes, all the teachers did some evaluations, and of course this online work and remote schooling was one part of this evaluation process. And there was one girl, and she's really a great student, like all the perfect grades in her. So really, let's say this measure of better, it's one of the best students of the school. And she was crying at her last lesson of mathematics, explaining the teacher what kind of problems she had in the remote online classes of mathematics, because of a very poor signal, as Mr. Jokic now has in Zadar, and the problems of lack of the picture, lack of the sound, and so on. And she didn't say that to the teacher, because the whole class, so she is really this perfect student with the best grades, and maths is one of her strong, so very talented pupil. And she didn't say that to her parents, to her teachers, or to her classmates, because she felt that everyone is expecting of her that nevertheless, we are now remote, we are not in the school, she must be perfect in maths. And I don't know who talked about the group of very talented or exceptional kids. That was really, or is a really big problem of this pandemic times, because I think all the schools, especially mainstream schools, quite easily forgot to that group because of all the organizing about remote and everybody being equipped and trying to look after all those who didn't have the equipment. I think that that part was quite well sorted out, especially in autumn and in winter, but these kids just hang outside of the system, and many vulnerable groups that we wouldn't like to see before March 2020 are now just in front of us. And I really hope we have energy, time and experience of this year that we address them for the future planning of our educational systems or modeling in post-pandemic world.
Thank you very much. Mr. Marcos Turley, what are your experiences? Did you notice new vulnerable groups, or just the division is bigger or more noticeable?
Well, I could also start my answer with another question. Haven't we all become a new vulnerable group in this last year? I would also agree that I didn't see a new vulnerable group as a new group that could emerge. But rather than that, the focus of our attention has shifted to some existing vulnerabilities. If we think about loneliness, isolation, unsupervised use of modern communication technology, those are just some of the aspects of the increasing incidence, for example, from my perspective, of speech and language disorders. But this is not a phenomenon of the last year alone. And also a more significant increase is seen in the incidence of emotional problems of children. But again, this is also not a phenomenon of the last year alone. And I think that it seems to me that we are all more sensitive and more accurate in identifying such problems that are already here with us. And imagine this fact, which is also linked to this last one special year. Our Slovenian regular compulsory schools were much more closed more than the special ones. Special institutions, we have been fully functional on exceptional circumstances since January 4. And we are still alive and surviving more or less successfully. But we are not running out of different challenges, and they are not triggered by some novelties. They are always present, and we have to take this in consideration. My personal conviction also is based on the knowledge that my strength is to live in diverse circumstances. And those circumstances, usually they shouldn't define me. I have the power to harmonize with circumstances whenever they happen, whatever they are. And this, from my personal belief, is in our school, our main challenge. But not only now, usually every day.
Thank you very much. And now I would like both representatives of tertiary education, Mr. Smonik first, and then Mr. Luburic. Students had even more difficult times. No, everybody had difficult times, but I feel for students, because usually the student life is the one that's perhaps most defining, most free. When the sky is the limit, you are attending classes, but you have also a lot of social life, and everything was shut down in this last year. So what are your experiences with new vulnerable groups, or what are your experiences with this pandemic effects on the students? Thank you very much. Mr. Marian Smonik first, please.
Yeah, I believe already the previous discussants did mention a number of issues which are all of course also relevant for the high school area. higher education area, I would like just to comment the numbers, or with some numbers, the discussion around the internet connections. So the recent study, which was performed for European Commission about the COVID and the European high education area, showed that of course, most of the students do have their own personal computers, but about 60% have problems with the a good internet connection. So 60% of students have that kind of problems, and we have noticed that problems within our school as well. So especially regarding or in the times of exams, this is the biggest frustration of this for the student. Obviously, is to lose the internet connection between the online exam. So this is really horrible to hear that, but this is the situation. This is the fact. On the other hand, of course, not just the internet and the computers. Even so, that study performed for the European Commission showed that between 30 and 40% of the students don't have proper place to study and to work, so quiet place to study and to work. So, you know, this is, of course, helping us in understanding our problems, that you know, we are sharing that problem with the greater area. On the other hand, of course, it still is a problem. So when talking about the, you know, new vulnerable groups, of course, on one hand, we can easily forget, you know, the existing or the traditional, I would say, vulnerable groups, like disabled. For instance, when you are on all the time on Zoom, then you don't see you don't see that somebody is sitting on the wheelchair. You know, you just treat everybody in the same way. So suddenly you lose that perspective. On the other hand, yes, it was mentioned by Marco already before. You know, I did write this down for my other session, which I performed months ago. So equality provided by equal study conditions in the classroom disappears by changing to we are all online. So we changed to online in 3 days only last year. We were really very good prepared. But you know, this is the fact. So then suddenly everybody became you know, vulnerable group in a way. So, and that's what I said, the equality provided by the study conditions in the classroom, this disappears suddenly. So and we all became diverse with this. So, and what does it mean? It means that suddenly we had to focus. We have to focus on realize that there is a big diversity of needs. So we have students, we have faculty, we have, of course, broader society, and everybody somehow expected our help and needed our help. So we did develop, you know, 4 areas of activities we did perform with, you know, SEBLU Inform. So our school did special activities in informing the population. Then SEBLU helps, and SEBLU contributes, and SEBLU personally. So what I wanted to stress is that within SEBLU helps, we did organize psychosocial counseling as well. So, and just recently we realized that what we did earlier was not enough. So a month ago we organized, or we hired 2 clinical psychologists, especially just for the needs of our students. One for Slovenian students and one for international students. So it was not a question, should we do it, or how much does it cost, and what does it mean? No, it was done from today to tomorrow because the needs are so big, so huge. And what you mentioned earlier, of course, is the truth. You know, the students when asked, the government, it's easy for the government to say, okay, now we are in green and now we start, go back to school and do our jobs and studies as we used to do it. We did ask students. 80% of students, they of course can't come to Ljubljana because they don't have where to stay, because they are now staying at home and that's it. On the other hand, yeah, this means that they are still at home. They should be around. They should, I don't know, bring their beer from Slovenj where I was born, to Ljubljana, because we didn't drink Union beer, we just drink Laško beer at that time. This is diversity. We had to bring that beer from with us at that time, because in Ljubljana there was just Union beer. But yeah, this is it. So we did have to refocus to everybody, now, what is the solution? We can talk about it later on, but within the discussions we did have within that European symposium was that we should probably think about different approaches, perhaps personalized student experience. There are some schools, some universities in Europe already doing that. So you focus on the student and with the really making the studies and arrangements very flexible, and so you somehow can conquer the new problems or new situations we do have. But
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So basically what we learned is that we don't need only a good access to internet, but we also need a space where we can close the door behind us in order to continue with any online learning if there will necessarily have to get back to it. So especially now that there was this fashion trend of open spaces also in apartments, not only in offices, it's quite hard to find a room with a door, basically, which is a necessary element for successful online learning. And to Mr. Goran Luboric, what was your experience with new vulnerable groups at your university, your faculty? Thank you.
Let me add on another angle to this. Of course, students, especially teenagers, younger people, it's a very stressful. It has been a very stressful time for them. It still is, but I think it was almost equally stressful to professionals like teachers, like professors. There's an angle with our own, let's say, self-esteem towards technologies. We have like some of the professors are aged 50, 60 years old, and I have seen it a lot of times. People tend to be resistant to new technologies. So you can imagine, your life is basically turned upside down from the point of lockdown onwards, where you have to adapt to completely new technologies. You have worked your whole life face to face. You have been very, very interactive. Now suddenly you are, behind the screen. How do you interact with students? How do you keep the momentum of the class going on? And I have experience with technologies since I used to program as a software as a student, so I know the logic behind it. It can help, actually, it can help very much. The challenge, for example, at my institution was to try to, let's say, lower the resistance to new technologies to people, to teachers, to professors that really, at the first glance didn't really like to, I don't want to use it. I just, I would like to keep things the way they were, but it wasn't. It just couldn't be done. Since the lockdown was obligatory to everybody, the fact itself lowered, the resistance wall to new technologies. And I'll just give one simple example regarding regarding interaction in the classroom. We also use Zoom as a software, as a technology, and in the beginning of online classes, there were like challenges, how to work in teams, how to give students assignments so that they can work in teams. Until we discovered there are breakout rooms, for example, which that you can use to divide the group of, let's say, 30 people to groups of 5, 6 groups of 5, etc. So as times were moving on, it was sort of more natural and more natural and more natural in that sense. And we had. Not so long ago, we surveyed all of our professors and teachers, and interestingly, we asked them, how would you like to, go back to the old way of studying, meaning go back to the classrooms in a hybrid mode, 1 week on, 1 week off, or 1 week live, 1 week online. And the majority of them actually said, no, we would like to keep doing it online until the end of the classroom part of class session part of the semester. So it's what it tells to me is that people have actually sort of made themselves more comfortable using the technologies. Regarding students, it's in a way it's sort of a similar experience. I actually think that students are currently pupils that would like even more to come back to the classrooms than the professors. I don't know what the situation is on other faculties, on other universities. I have heard a lot of stories, positive ones and negative ones, but I have to say that, adapting to technology is a challenge in itself. And of course, provided that you have internet connection, that you have internet speed, it can be achieved, but there are a lot of challenges along the way. It's been going on for like a year and something, and I think more or less we have, I would say we have found a sort of a comforting, more comfort. Sorry, we are more comfortable with the technologies, and they come more naturally to us today than they were before. And my personal opinion is that partially it will probably stay in that sense in higher education, where it can, of course, partially, not completely.
Okay, thank you very much. I just to continue from here. So what were the successful initiatives or best practices that you introduced during the times of COVID? Concerning diversity and inclusion, and what were the outcomes, or perhaps even also how important was the communication with all the employees and stakeholders, either being students or teachers or parents or community and policymakers? I don't know who would be willing to start, but I think Mr. Smonik and Mr. Luburic somehow indicated that they already started working on some solutions. So perhaps if you can start, for example, Mr. Luburic and then Mr. Smonik, and then we'll continue with other panelists.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we have started. We actually, when the lockdown was, became evident, we stopped we stopped with the classes for like a week. We took that time to prepare. It's actually, when I say it, it sounds very simple. We actually prepared video tutorials for everybody. I mean, all teachers and students alike, for them how to use each and every part of any particular software that we use for online education. One point of view. The other point of view is that the communication has become more, of course, digitalized, and personally, what I have experienced is that I'm much more. There's much more a need for direct but indirect communication also, because there's a lot more follow-up. You cannot have an interaction with 10 students or 20 or 30 students directly at a point in time. So you have to do it indirectly. So there's a lot more follow-ups. There's a lot more individual work. There's possibly somewhat more homeworks and some kind of exercises to be done individually. But all in all, I think that what it takes from a professional is you have to be more creative. I would say you have to be more creative when having the challenge of teaching online.
Okay, you just mentioned me to go on with this discussion. So I believe what is important when we are talking about how did we do our job in the last year, in the last time period, it's important as well to understand what we are doing now. We are reacting with a kind of online, we changed, and I already said we are all online. So this was our kind of the words we used when promoting the new way of working or teaching. But actually, we are talking about the emergency online study. Emergency online teaching, not the traditional online teaching. Emergency, it's easy to understand it from one point of view, of course, is, Tamara, she's our teacher, I mentioned earlier, she's a single mother. She's a widow. She's a foreigner in Slovenia with 2 kids, and what? Now, suddenly, no kindergarten, single mother, teaching, doing research, and now everything even online. So when we are talking about the traditional or kind of a online study, that means that the society is functioning normally. So you do your job, just not in the classroom, but online. Now we are in a very different situation, and this situation will change definitely. And this is how I believe we will survive as well, because what the assessment were, and I believe they're approved in this time is that this change and this way of teaching did means that the typically professor would need 2 times more hours for preparing and for performing its normal job as usually as before. So that's really a huge change, and of course it is possible to do it because that it will last just a certain time period. It will not go on forever. So this is one important issue. On the other hand, so when talking about the faculty, the people working at the school, it was very important to inform them on time, to give clear instructions, to make decisions in front, not to change the way of doing the stuff in a day. So we were, as I mentioned earlier, we were very well prepared. Happily, we introduced the special platform Canvas already years ago, so it was then relatively easy to change the teaching and go to online, and basically really online. And even the exams, they were done completely online. And for instance, in this time period, when we are in the times of changes as well, it was clear for us. We did decide the online teaching will go until the end of the year, definitely. No way to go into the hybrid form. Why? One thing I already mentioned before, 80% of the students don't have a place to live in Ljubljana. On the other hand, it's impossible to organize the study process in hybrid way. Why? So you have one lecture at the school here, okay, of course, following all the official requirements, then the next lecture would be perhaps online. But you need, at least 1 hour for the kids to go, to the students to come from the university, from the school to home, to go to change to online and then come back again. So we realized that's practically impossible to introduce such a way of doing it, and there are certain small issues, small cases where we do already perform some classes here as well, but really very, very limited. On the other hand, regarding the faculty, it was already mentioned. So the gender issues, definitely, Slovenia is one of the leading countries in gender equality in the world. And we are, even before, I don't know, the Finland and Sweden and the United States, we are better than they are. But still, of course, all the problems were there definitely with the female faculty working at the school and having a second job back home, or having a kid in the lab when teaching or whatever. So what we did, of course, we did do some adjustment in this area, because the teachers, the gender problem is then the problem in the research as well. Then because of the there are other issues related to research, and then having really bigger problems for women to come into the publications and so on. On the other hand, traditionally we have that problem which is called sticky floor or Matilda effect and so on. So for women, because when we traditionally see that when looking at the PhD students, we have about 50% men, 50% women. Then suddenly when we come to the assistant professors and associate professor and professors, the things really change a lot. From 50% to, 60, 40, and 70, 30, and at the end to 80, 20, practically at the full professor level. So, when thinking about the situation we did have the last year, of course, this is just this problem is just exaggerated, and so that's why within the university there are certain mechanisms which is more flexibility in extending the tenure track and deadline requirements and so on. So there are certain things being done, but I don't think that this is enough. And as in general, the assessment is that the women will suffer in a way, even because the changes, again, we will not go back completely to the situation which as it used to be. And general assessment is there will be less women in the workforce. There more of them will stay at home and so on. So even the gender equality plan, which is being launched by the university here, will not help a lot. Even we did talk a lot to our professors, women professors, and they all basically did get a lot of help by their husbands and so on, but still, it isn't enough. It's still different.
Thank you very much. Mr. Turley, I would like to ask you also regarding this communication with teachers, with your staff, with other stakeholders, and maybe best practices that you introduced. What were there? Thank you.
Well, the most successful initiative and the best practice is that we gain some more power in understanding our adaptability. But perhaps I should add another adjective: mutual adaptability, because of the integration of pupils, parents, and teachers. In a community that celebrates diversity and wants to be inclusive, it is hard for me to imagine that it would not also be adaptable. I can show you different questions and try to find answers about what we did in this time of pandemic. Have we developed online education? Of course we have. Have we provided everyone with the right equipment? Yes. Have we brought school supplies to the pupils' homes? Of course we have. Did we deliver lunches to pupils at home? We did also that. Have we opened our kindergarten and school before all the others were open? Yes, we have. And overall, I consider that our best example or good practice has been this awareness of developing of a variety of flexibilities. And this is not something related to the pandemic. But if you really ask about precise outcome, well, look at me. I'm still alive and kicking, maybe with some bruises, some of us also vaccinated, but still alive and kicking.
Thank you very much. Definitely, the challenges were very varied in different levels. I still keep thinking about what was said about female professors, because I've heard a lot about the backlog of work, how also the research they were not able to perform the research. And as you said, also on other levels, there were big challenges. So that's why I would like to ask you maybe also, which topics after all this COVID year are important in today's education? So we had this experience, but now we have to move slowly in the future. What are the topics that were raised by the pandemic in education? And I would first maybe like to start with Mr. Jokic, please.
Well, it's a long term. I'm glad that there is a big, still big world dilemma in Slovenia, which is better beer, Union or Laško. I'm really glad about that. However, from the Zadar perspective, that's really a relevant issue nowadays. Both are good from the Croatian perspective. But like just to come also a little bit back on the issue of vulnerable groups and which are the new groups, we kind of know that there are elements within the especially student body which are more prone and less resilient. It seemed, at least in the Croatian case, that especially girls in a better high schools or better gymnasiums, those who have kind of wanted everything to be perfect, wanted everything to be super, they're actually more prone to be vulnerable at this moment, and they are the ones who would probably desire the most need. We also have the findings about which cluster of pupils are the most adaptable to the online environment. These would be the boys with a lower achievement over the years, especially those who have had an extensive experience in playing video games, so in digital environment. Some may say, ironically, that they're the, like while the lecture is online, they're on the other screen still playing video computer games. So like we have all of that, but they are actually really groups who have been hit harder by the pandemic. Also, the historical event such as this has, as I think Marko has rightfully said, so it just exacerbates already existing vulnerabilities. So like there is, like in any event, there's just the clarity of what was already existing, and that kind of enlarges. When you ask me what are the future trends and what would be kind of the relevant for the future of education, we can split it in several elements. Speaking just about the pre-tertiary education, there has been, and it's been open now, and that's the reason why we are doing this extensive national monitoring. There is a clear discussion, and it needs to be very open, about the educational losses that the pupils have endured over the year and a half. We know that these losses are really large. We can even estimate the extent of them. We can also see the loss with regards to the educational behavior of pupils, especially with regards to the level of motivation of pupils and the work habits of pupils. So any meaningful educational policy should aim for these three elements with regards to the, like when the things soon hopefully come to normal. There's another issue which kind of is clear that we need to do. One thing is that we should not also over clinicize the, like the pupils. Most of the pupils, as has been said before, are resilient bunch, just like us as a humankind. We are resilient, like creatures. So are the pupils. So most of the kids are resilient. There are some that need special attention, but what we should do is basically build on the resilience on one side and then provide targeted help for those that need help. With regards to those who need help, we also already know which are the fields where they're the most hurt. This is basically in the field of the emotional hardship that they experience. So in the future, and hopefully the Croatia will have, and Slovenia too, will have meaningful public educational policies which would specifically target specific groups with regards to the specific hardships that they experience. I think personally, out of this, we can come out as a much stronger, like societies and much stronger educational systems. I also see this as a big opportunity of introduction of the, like online teaching and learning within the mainstream education. However, there are some elements which are completely untapped, at least in Croatia. If you think about assessment in the online environment, I think I know I communicate with colleagues in Slovenia quite a lot. The issue of assessment and grading with regards to the online environment is completely untouched. The benefits of the potential of the online assessment, adaptive assessment, is completely untapped. As Marian said, we are reactionary in this moment. If we would be proactive in combining the elements of the traditional teaching and learning within the classroom environments and like good features of the online teaching and learning, such as such as modeling, personalization of teaching and learning, such psychological deep diving within the situation, like use of digital media and online models in order to envisage something, to portray something to kids. Sonia, when you were in high school or in elementary school, for example, you would learn, I don't know, the blood system or like the nervous system from the book. You would take a book and then you would go like, this is this, this is this, this is this, this is that. The digital technology, online technology, allows, like much deeper understanding of pupils if you use it in the right manner. Same thing is with the, like with the assessment. If we would be a smart societies, it would be societies which, like really take this as an opportunity to go forward. We would combine something which is still education, and that's the human touch. Because without it, you don't have anything. And then combine it with the elements of the digital and online element. And just to finish my take here, like we in Croatia, we have had two unbelievable findings over these 18 months. First came in the June, when we were looking at the finishing grades of the elementary education. In Croatia, that's the 8th grade. We don't have a 9-year school, so it's the 8th grade of the elementary education. There, when we came to the pupils and said, like, how do you compare online teaching and learning with a typical classroom, traditional classroom teaching and learning? They preferred traditional classroom teaching and learning. In unbelievable way, the pandemic has caused among these young, like rascals, the kids who like didn't like school at all, to think, hey man, like school is cool. Like that was unbelievable. The second unbelievable element came actually today and yesterday in Croatia. The maturanti, like the matura graduation class, is leaving these 2 days. These are 2 final days of their education. And the ministry has decided that they will put these 2 days online, although they could be in a physical environment. And that caused the revolt among pupils. And now many of them, including Zadar, are saying that tomorrow and day after tomorrow, they will be in school. So that's unbelievable. Like there has been a revolution of like liking of the school in Croatia, at least.
Thank you very much. Definitely, I agree that from the socializing perspective, it's really, really important to be in the classroom. Although definitely we need to go hand in hand with the advances in technology, especially now that we know that there will be an introduction of VR, augmented reality. On the other hand, we know the teachers are not really familiar, for example, with TikTok and or Instagram stories for high school students, for example, and children are using these technologies all the time. So there is this big divide among certain pupils and teachers, and it's quite challenging to realize how to bridge this divide. because the technology will be going on and on and on. So do you have any solutions to that? I mean, especially when we know the children want to be in school, but they are using technology in their spare time.
But Sonia, that's quite interesting. Also, when you mentioned the teachers, we also know that this period, now we know it actually, has been kind of hard on them, both in the terms of demand of their work. Also, the principals like Goran and Gregor, you know, like it's been really hard to organize the school and to run the school and to teach, etc. And that effect has also caused and dented their enthusiasm for the job. And that's really important to know and to communicate, you know. But there has also been, in their perception, a growth in their competence with regards to the digital technology. So I'll be really optimistic about the situation. The hardships will go, you know, they will be lower and lower. However, what stays really is something positive. And in my regards, I think that whole of the situation will be basically positive, both for the use of digital technology by the teachers and by the pupils, but also with regards to the resilience of the educational workers and their comfort, you know, like being in comfort with the use of digital technology. So I think that you know, like, regardless of all that's happening, I think we should be positive about the future.
Okay, thank you very much. We are nearing the last part of our discussion here. So I was just wondering if there are any questions from the attendees. You can just a reminder, you can write them in the chat, and the organizer will forward the questions to me so I can ask them to the panelists. As I know, until now, there haven't been any questions yet, so we will proceed with what we prepared. Definitely, from what I hear, I think it's the communication with the teachers is really crucial if we want to continue with this hybrid system of online learning and advances in technology, as well as being in classrooms and in real life, for example. So maybe I could ask you also, if you compare the onset of pandemic, when we're still, for example, clapping on the balconies with what we are seeing today in schools, you mentioned children want to go back to school. I remember that it was really hard to explain to them before pandemic that being in school is a human right. To them, it was everything but. And now they realize that it's really cool to be in school, as you mentioned, Boris. So what would you say that there is a difference between the early phases of pandemic and our realizations and challenges in today's world when almost more than a year has passed? So what do you think we would need for the new normal? And maybe I would invite first Mr. Marcos Turley.
Yeah, the new normal. If I start from the perspective that I'm not a fan of uniformity, I believe in the possibility and need of providing adaptations, as I already mentioned today. We try to get to the same goal maybe, or maybe the exact same goal, or just to the similar goal. And those goals can also be individualized and differentiated. This is something that we need. The understanding also from the part of the stakeholders that individualization, differentiation, that are usually some basic pedagogical aspects, can be really performed in practice and implemented in our everyday life. So that even though strange things happen, we should have this lack of freedom that we try to solve our problems without being pressured, controlled, uniformized, and so on.
Thank you. Mr. Popovic, what are your views? And also maybe if you still want to share some thoughts about the communication with your staff.
Yes, of course, it's very interesting. I spent a lot of years in my conversation with my staff, how they must change his mind. What are the different people? What are the migrants? And a lot of energy I use to change this opinion. In last year, I can say that I have a lucky because each my teachers change on mine himself. because they start to think about this, that it's like Boris said, classic teaching, it's not enough. And they can't wait to change something, just that must give something more. And that what are big change are, first some years I push them to do something before we start with this pandemic and for this lockdown. They start to push me, just organizative principle, something, we need something, we must do something. That's something what's very good for each teacher. And something more, I think that a lot of teachers told me that in that online education, they feel all the students on the same level, on the same situation. It's not a big difference. And that's something what I can say that was very good what's happened in the last year. And I have a lucky because a lot of my teachers give much more than before. My two teachers who work in a preparatory class, they understand that parents, that family don't have, like I said, don't have a lot of computers. And if they have 5 students in family, 5 children, they must use this computer on a different time. And my teachers are prepared to be online all the day, anytime in the morning, afternoon, by night, just to be in contact, to don't lose these students. And that's maybe a little bit, but something very important, what change in the head, in the mind, in my stuff. I'm happy for that.
But was it difficult to persuade them, or they came up themselves with that notion that they will have to help children, or did you have to convince them?
Yes, I have a contact all the time with them, but that what is interesting, a lot of my teachers have own idea and own energy to do something more, something different, to be closer to these students.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Deleja, your school is definitely one of the most progressive schools in Slovenia. You are using a lot of things. You have been using a lot of things even before the times of COVID. You were willing to help children or to meet their needs already before COVID. So I assume that also your teachers were more responsive. What were your challenges? Did you have to communicate with them, or they were just, it was just normal to them? And what is the difference between the beginning of pandemic and today?
Well, it wasn't normal. Nothing was normal, especially in the first lockdown. So in March, it was really just emergency. And it was very interesting, actually, how we responded, everybody, all stakeholders, so parents, pupils, and teachers of the school. We did a lot through all possible means of communicating in this time of the first spring 2020 lockdown, with evaluations each week and then in two weeks period, so to get as much information back as possible how things are running. And we really try to digitalize not only the curricular process but also the extracurricular one, so to hold together the whole community. What's also very important within an organization, to build up the community, especially in these times of need and some other circumstances that we are not used of. And we use the time from the first to second lockdown to prepare also all the other foundations for possible new remote learning that happened then in the autumn, much better prepared in this technical way, also with equipping the children, the teachers, and not only in the technical way, but also in ways of psychological support, organizing a lot of activities for parents, for children, the so-called Corona webinars, monthly or weekly, different themes that were proposed by the teachers, by the parents in the afternoon hours. And again holding the community together. So for the future, I think we should really go much more back to the roots. I know it seems strange to hear that in the times of being progressive, but in the means of didactics and pedagogy, we really should return as teachers to the role of a mentor. So somebody who has some life experience that he can share with younger ones, youngsters. And seeing the curricular process much more through the storytelling of our life experiences and our lives, with much more differentiating and much more individualization, as this is now the case in the Slovenian school system. And I think these are the good perspectives, how to integrate all the good experience, and it was really a lot also in that year of the pandemic into the modeling of the future educational systems.
Thank you very much. We have received a question from the attendees of our conversation today. Katarina Plečaš is asking, what about assistance for kids who have special programs? How they look at this hybrid situation? Does someone have experience with that? I think that maybe Mr. Turley might have some experience, or any other of the panelists, please.
Well, I should make maybe a distinction. If we're talking about children that are included in special institutions, they were fully supervised and assisted by the staff with any particular problems. There was a major problem for children with special needs in mainstream schools, because those schools were closed, and the usual additional aid from peripatetic teachers like pseudo-pedagogues or speech therapists coming to the school was not implemented in that time. And I think that was one of the major mistakes of our stakeholders, that they didn't organize efficiently the continuity of the support for those children. And yes, unfortunately, this stays a problem. And if something would happen again in any other occasion, we should take in account to solve this more efficiently, correctly, for the sake of the children, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Jokic, please.
If I can add on that to Katarina, in Croatia there has been a real problem. You know, like digitalization and online teaching and learning can be an equalizer, but it can also like increase the divide. You know, like if there is a case of digital divide present in this situation, it has been mostly for those kids who are in special need and have a special teaching assistance within the schools, and those who are in underprivileged socioeconomical environments. So with that regards, the issue of digitalization and online teaching and learning has increased divide within our societies. And as I said, like smart policies would look upon that and then make an extra effort in order for this divide to kind of lower. We also have an experience within our context that the teachers of the regular classes, not like Marco said, like not the special institutions, but where the inclusion has been kind of part of the everyday work, has explicitly experienced and stated that their biggest regret in this time was not having enough time and space to devote their attention to those who really need their help and who have special educational needs. So that has been one of the negative aspects of this situation. That's clear.
Okay, thank you. And we have a follow-up question to this. I work in transition program for children with special needs who are included in regular schools, and they're all in a very big stress. Their grades fell down, and now when assessment is in the center, they have big emotional problems. How can we support them? So I don't know which one of you would like to answer this, but the first two guests were Boris and Marco. If maybe someone else can add, or if not, I would ask either Marco or Boris to answer this.
Well, I can just add on that also, like connected with other, as I said, vulnerable groups, and especially, for example, with regards to the earthquake that we had, what there needs to happen. And it's also part of pedagogical work and a tradition of, if you want, of a good tradition of, I would say, Balkan countries, and I count Slovenia, I'm sorry, like of this like Middle European countries, or however you want to call it, is basically a flexibility within the educational system. With that respect, like if the children have had, like hardships, if they have experienced unequal circumstances in order to fulfill certain outcomes, I would expect that both the like national agencies, but also teachers and the schools would come in favor of the children, and then that would kind of lower the stress of them in assessment situations. So there should be appeal to all educators and all assessors, either external or internal, to kind of meet the needs of the students and kind of address especially their fears.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add something? Maybe Mr. Derea, because I know you have some assistants in your schools.
That was one of the challenges we faced through the first lockdown, and that we also worked on quite a lot in between. So in the summer months, how to assist the kids with special needs. And we have from, I don't know, in the first year, we have a pupil that's blind, totally blind, and a lot of other like dyslexia, scotopic syndrome, problems that need more addressing. But the majority of these kids had a much more time and peace to work on their problems and in their tempo during the remote learning, as during this strange hybrid model we had since 2 weeks ago. And they have, I think, more problems now being back to the schools with addressing all the issues about assessing and stuff that's but I think that should be another round table about assessments in the Slovenian school system. That's one of the wounds opened now in these pandemic times. But individualization was crucial here, and really also I would like to point out the role of the head class teacher. So the teacher who is leading the whole class, what's the English expression, razrednik? So class teacher, yeah, the one teacher in charge of the class, and the cooperation between him, the other teachers, and the advisory services of the school, so that really everybody knew the needs and the specifics of each student. And that's a very hard thing to do. And that was, as we experienced, harder before than within the remote learning, because we had much more time to communicate fast and also effective on that kind of issues, which we always have problems with because of the lack of time for the whole staff to be together and discussing those kind of problems. And that's one of the things we would like to build on in the next school year. So how, with this experience of remote learning, gain more time for the staff to work on very important issues that are school curricular related and important for the development and success of our pupils and students.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just wondering if Mr. Popovic also has something to add to this.
I don't feel good about this question, because we're trying to find some solution or to have some idea to be like was. Doesn't matter what's happened in that time. We don't have a miracle to be on the same level everything if government don't support us. I really, like a principal, I give a lot of energy for my staff to give much more, but if the government didn't give us enough support, we can't be on the same level. You know, when was a war, you have died people. When was a pandemic, you have not enough good education system. It's emergency system, and if we want to be smart than all the others, it's impossible. but the practice is push on the leader and they must find the solution. Sometimes it's impossible. I'm sure that we give much which we can't give, but more of this, it's impossible. We have a pandemic, it's emergency time.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering if any of you has a replica to another one of the others, because we are nearing the end, and just in case if you have, if not, I would just like to give you all, to ask you all the final question, which is of course looking into the future. So basically, what would be, in its follow-up to what Mr. Popovic has already said, what is your message to your peers and policymakers, maybe in a minute, and maybe also related to the things that have been raised here, for example, curriculum, and in relation to curriculum, also the hidden curriculum in schools, or the communication between everybody, all the stakeholders, and also accepting his or her emotions. So maybe just one final thought, and maybe we can start with Mr. Popovic, because you already started with this message to the policymakers. If you would like to add something maybe, or that was it, Mr. Popovic.
I think that's it. I don't want to be unoptimistic. I believe in the future, and I hope that everybody learns something in this last year. If you don't do something more, you can wait to be changed or to be good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turley.
Okay, then I will remain utopic and idealistic. I do still believe in relationships, even though in a virtual reality, but in a virtual reality, we should probably emphasize the word reality. We still need a deeper and humanistic approach in our interpersonal processes, especially between teachers, students, children, pupils, parents, in learning in general. And yes, at the end, I should say that we are free beings who make decisions about ourselves, regardless of the circumstances.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delea.
Yeah, I strongly agree with Mr. Sterlem. So relationships, communication, and for the policymakers, maybe they really should think about the bottom-up approach. Because if we would have been listened to, also in these emergency times, a lot of things could happen and change faster with the experience that we gained on the field. And I really miss this bottom-up approach. But as my colleagues before, I'm very optimistic, and I'm sure we will be able to get the best of this pandemic times, really in this interpersonal field and in the field of relationships that we must build, with the resilience that we must build up in our schools, and also more authenticity of our organizations, with much more storytelling of our older educators to our young mentoring ones that are following and that will shape our world in the future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smonik, please.
Thank you. About the policymakers, so I would just say support, you know, the issues which are related to that, to bring more flexibility into the educational system towards what I said, personalized student experience, which is starting already, you know, this experience already before in the not before the higher education, definitely, and then it goes on into the lifelong learning. So this would be crucial. So flexibility, and within this systems which are already there to be really performed and used out more, like you know, our European University Connection Utopia, I know, with Barcelona, Brussels, Warwick, Gothenburg, and Ljubljana, you know, to use the opportunity and be really inclusive and diverse within the system. So this is what is already there and should be used out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goran Lupuric.
Yes, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. In the terms of what we discussed, I would like to, and I think it's just a matter of time. It's not if, but when, or in what ratio. I would like to get back to the old normal with all the advantages of the new normal, because I think a symbiotic sort of result from it will probably emerge, and probably is emerging already. And yeah, I think we should head on, you know, fully with full self-esteem. And as Boris said, we are all very resilient. So I think we will use, you know, the best solutions from this experience, and, you know, move on accordingly.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Boris Jokic, your words.
First, I would like the next meeting that we meet together, especially our colleagues from Slovenia, to be here. Hopefully, you will see Zadar. Hopefully, you see it in the seaside. So we are not on Zoom anymore, and then especially Goran, Gregor, Marian, and Marco, that we all meet in a normal environment. Second, I want to say something like you know, education is really. At least in Croatia, I know in Slovenia it's the same, like especially educational workers in schools, in universities are often looked from above, you know, they're often looked at someone who is inferior. If something, this situation has shown that the educational system is really flexible. Educational workers have really shown flexibility within this situation, and they should be praised for it. This flexibility also means that there is a chance of remaining and increasing diversity in our education, and that should be really fostered. If you think about it, no other subsystem of society has shown as resilience and as such flexibility as education, and really this should be praised. With regards to the policymakers and politicians especially, I have a strong affinity for them, you know. They should really listen, as someone who said, as Gregor said before, they should really listen to practitioners and to the researchers and to the scientists and develop their policies based on the evidence and the practical experience of people. If they would do such, their policies would be better, they would be more popular. However, we know the politicians here, and we know that they will not do such, and all we need to do is also speak further, speak more elaborate, speak deeper, either online or in Zadar. So I invite you next year, we meet here in Zadar for a, you know, like really good discussion, much better than online discussion that we are having now.
Thank you very much. And you don't want to know the floods, not the floods, real floods, but how heavily the rain is coming down in Slovenia in the last month. So I think that we would all like to be in Zadar with you, definitely.
So, Sonia, like here, as I said, I was in a meeting with school principals from this region, and all they said is, Boris, please don't do a Zoom meeting. Please don't do it. Just let's meet somewhere, be it in a park or somewhere else.
Yes, that's also a good alternative. You know, the classrooms outside in the parks or in the forests are a good alternative to virtual classrooms in COVID times, definitely. So I really like to thank you all for this wonderful discussion, for the amazing thoughts and that you shared with us. I would also like to thank all the participants for your patience, for being with us both hours. I hope that the roundtable was interesting to you, that you got what you were expecting from us, and I wish you all a lovely day. I hope it will not be raining. I hope it will be still shining. The sun will be still shining in Zadar. And again, thank you very, very much for being us here today. And I hope that the politicians and policymakers will hear what we had to say today. Otherwise, we will probably find some ways to convey these messages to them. Thank you very much and have a lovely day. Bye.